how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Hello and a warm welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to Global Television live in Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Queen Agaba and the program is Inside Today, and we'll be discussing and dissecting the fallout of the Saturday's just concluded elections in Kogi, Imo, and of course we're still expecting results from Bayelsa State, where coalition is in progress. In Imo State, Governor Hope Uzodinma has been re-elected for another term in office, and in Kogi State, INEC has declared the candidate of the Congress, Usman Ododo, winner. Well, the Independent Electoral Commission has resumed collation of results in Bayelsa State, and hopefully we should be getting the conclusions of the results later today. Joining us now on the program to talk about this development is we have Mr. Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst and development consultant, and Emmanuel Osemeka, public affairs analyst. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Okay, so just before we get to our guests, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be dissecting the issues. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Now we'll go to our guest. I'll begin with Mr. Jide Ojo. Mr. Jide, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Okay.
It's my pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much. I would want to, let's begin with your assessment of the election in general, you know, the conduct of the election, especially with the announcement of winners in Kogi and Imo State, which trickled in last night. So how do you react to Ododo's victory? What's your assessment of the election and then your reaction to the announcement of Ododo as winner in Kogi State?
Oh, thank you very much, Queen. My own reaction would be that I foresaw this. I foresaw APC victory, but there's some other things I didn't foresee. Why did I say I foresaw APC victory? When I saw that the ranks of the opposition was divided, you have Murtala Ajanka from Kogi East, the Gala ethnic groups, under flying the flag of SDP. Meanwhile, he left APC to join SDP to get the governorship ticket. You have Dino Mendaye in the Kogi West. You have Leke Abejide in Kogi West. You have one Brahma of Action Alliance in Kogi West. And all of these people are wanting to wrestle power from an incumbent government of Yaya Bello, who has an anointed candidate in Usman Ododo. And don't forget, incumbency power was there. As I've said on several media platforms, many notable politicians, smart politicians, don't want to be in the opposition. They want to be in the mainstream. And the mainstream here is APC, because it's the party at the center. And there was something President Tinubu did, which was a master stroke. The son of late former governor of Kogi State, Prince Abubakar Audu, was made Minister of Steel Development by President Tinubu ahead of this election. Don't also forget that aside from the Audu's son's nomination and serving in the Tinubu cabinet as a substantive Minister of Steel Development, there is also the palliatives, economic relief packages that to buy grains and other stuff. Of course, that is part of the 5 billion naira promised to all the state governors to be able to procure grains and other materials to distribute freely to people as a form of relief packages. Then there is also the conditional cash transfer, which has been expanded to 15 million. And assuming that these 15 million were prorated among 36 states, that means over 300,000 co-guides will be among the beneficiaries of this conditional cash transfer of 25,000 naira per household for 3 months. So those are the factors that has aided Usman Ododo's victory, coupled with the strong backing he has from the outgoing governor of the state, which is Yaya Bello. However, the significant dent or big minus in the Kogi election was the pre-filling of the result sheets in Kogi Central Senatorial District. Notable among which is Gorimagongo, where there were pre-filled result sheets in 9 out of 10 wards of that local government. And if I will break it down further, a ward is made up of between 10 to 15 polling units. So if you have massive pre-filling of election results, it throws up a dent on the integrity of result that was declared in favor of Usman Ododo. And of course, it's not limited to Gorimagongo. We also have similar scenario that was alleged to have played out in Okene, Okehi, Adavi, and Rajauputa. Although INEC said is looking into it, and we look forward to how that will eventually pan out. But it's a big stain and a big dent on the integrity of the result that INEC has announced as having been won by Usman Ododo. But I must also hasten to say that a multiple of factors, as I've enumerated earlier on, must have worked in favor of Usman Ododo because the rank of PDP itself is divided, given the fact that as a result of the pre-election matter, in which case Dino Melaye eventually was anointed, supposedly by Atiku Abubakar, to be the standard bearer of PDP in that state. That did not go down well with many PDP stalwarts in Kogi State. And of course, that may have also further undermined the chances of PDP winning in Kogi. You possibly must have seen the video or of interactive session that the Minister of FCT, Nyesom Wike, had with media, maybe earlier today or maybe sometimes yesterday. I wouldn't know the exact time, but it's after the election where he was lampooning PDP for fielding someone of Dino Melaye's character as the standard bearer of the party. But long story short, yes, there were pre-filling of results in some of the polling units. There were issues of security breaches in some of the polling units. There were also allegations of vote buying in some of the polling units. In fact, there is a footage of someone caught with ₦1 million and some other pre-filled results. All of these have to be investigated, and whoever is found culpable needs to be brought to book.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ajide. I know you mentioned the pre-filling of some of the sheets, which we all saw, and then violence. But I'll come to you. I just want to quickly go to Mr. Osemeka. Mr. Osemeka, to what extent do you agree with what Mr. Ajide has just said? What is your perception of the just concluded off-cycle election?
Thank you very much, Queen. I want to salute my big brother, my bon, Mr. Ajide Ojo. I think I agree 100% with what his submissions. The reality is that many of us believed that there have been, lessons learned from the 2023 general elections, and that from those lessons learned, that a lot of things, will be put in place and followed through to mitigate and forestall, to the barest minimum, this issue of vote buying, this issue of pre-filling result sheets. I think the last time I heard about pre-filling result sheet was in 2003 and 2007 elections. And at the time, we didn't have any form of electronic process involved. Howbeit, our electronic processes are still very minimal. Largely, you can say like 10% of our electioneering system, our voting procedure is electronic. But that speaks clearly to the need to amend the Electoral Act and, of course, strengthen INEC the more. Some have argued that the problem with the issue of our elections that is marred with all kinds of corruption is not necessarily INEC, but the people that are in INEC, those operating INEC. And that is high time if we're not ready to, appoint credible, responsible, and neutral individuals to man INEC and manage our elections. It is better we remove the independence in INEC and change the name to National Electoral Commission, NEC, because a lot of things have shown that INEC is not independent. If there is any independence in INEC, it's not more than 10-15%. If you recall, recently, there were about 10 newly appointed resident electoral commissioners. And I think 2 or 3 of them or thereabouts have been touted to be card-carrying members of a particular political party. In 2023, Nigeria should not be, doing things like that, because we should be improving our electoral jurisprudence. We should be improving our electoral processes and not going back to the dark days where, before election begins, results are already, written, the result sheets are taken, the money's exchanging hands left and right, and all that. Even with the massive deployment of security to the various states, with the massive deployment of electoral officers, to show that neutrality that, many have yearned I mean, I learned that as the last time, INEC deployed, I think, either 15 or 10 resident electoral commissioners to each of the 3 states. Then the police deployed about almost similar numbers, of senior police officers, just to be able to forestall any form of what do you call it now, inducement or unnecessary compromise by an individual per se. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, we still hear a lot of these shenanigans going on. One of the things that I'm still yet to get clarity on is to the extent that INEC, as of yesterday, said that there will be another election on the 18th for the 59 polling units in the Kogi Central. But to make a declaration, I still don't understand it, though. I mean, it was said that the gap between the first, the declared winner and the second run, the runner-up, cannot make any change, even if that election holds tomorrow or the entire vote is given to the runner-up to that election. But you see, there's something that lawyers say all the time, that justice must not just be, done. It must be seen to have been done. And I know clearly that there is a way INEC can function. Though things we don't expect everything to function 100%, but there is a way INEC can function, and they will get less complaint. People will see clearly that INEC did their utmost best. If they follow their rules to the letter, it will go a long way in improving and increasing the confidence of the populace. And maybe it will help, to show up the citizens' participation, because as it is today, many people are really not, do not really trust INEC. Do not really trust that INEC will deliver on anything they promise, because with every promise, it goes back to that same thing that they have always done.
Mr. Osemeka, thank you very much. Who do we blame? Who do we blame for these election irregularities? INEC has come out to say, especially in Kogi State, where we had pre-filled sheets and violence, some sort of violence and intimidation. INEC has come out to say there are investigations ongoing, debunk certain news. Who do we blame for these irregularities? Is it the government? Is it INEC or political parties?
The truth is, INEC has a major role, because INEC is a critical stakeholder in the elections. INEC is responsible for the elections. However, INEC is not responsible for security, definitely. INEC attitude, if INEC follows through the laid down rules in total, it will be difficult for the politicians to, perpetrate their shenanigans. Yes, the politician will always find a way, find loopholes to circumvent the system, but it behoves on INEC to ensure that whatever loophole that exists within the law or the procedure, that if they follow it through, it will checkmate all the plans, if not all, at least to a very large extent, the plans of the politicians to circumvent. Then, of course, when the security agencies are neutral as much as possible, trust me, that will go a long way. And I believe it starts with INEC. Everybody has their responsibility, both the citizens, the voters, the politicians, the security agencies, and INEC. But I believe that because INEC is responsible for the elections, take a look at the Imo State elections, where voting collation was ongoing and a particular party was in the lead. Then, of course, it came to one particular local government. The results that came from that local government was more than the total number of registered voters. It took the doggedness of the returning officer to say, no, we need to go and check, because that is what the rule says. So they checked the beavers, they checked the IREV, and by that check, it took time. And they were able to get the right numbers, and before the declaration was made. It happened in one or two other locations. In Adamawa City, for example, where the resident electoral commissioner, took what was not his responsibility, began to talk. Do that. They took time, went through the IREV, went through the beavers, and made the right corrections. And the truth is, INEC must follow through with their rules. When they do that, the politicians have no choice but to campaign to the people and depend largely on the people. And let me go further to say, if you take a look at the places where it is supposedly said that the people voted the persons that was eventually, declared, you will see that those persons are actually performing for the people, as against those who paid their way, or who paid their way through, or who use other kinds of means to win. When they eventually win, they will not use the state funds for the people. Rather, they will want to recoup it one way or the other. And of course, the people will suffer at the end of the day. So I believe it starts with INEC, then of course the security agencies, then of course the citizens themselves.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Osemeka. I was going to ask if you foresee, legal battles, but let me get to Mr. Jide Ojo. Mr. Jide Ojo, sir, I want to know, before I ask of your perception, in the last election, there were a lot of irregularities as well. I want to ask if you think, compared to this election, INEC has done better. Your general assessment of INEC, if you think they have done better. And I want to also know, what is your assessment of voter turnout in this election?
Okay, that's a double-barrel question. Whether INEC has done better, it depends on what are the variables you are looking at. In terms of uploading of election results, it was timely done. It was done in real time. So that is kudos. Election largely started on time. Not the entire polling unit started at 8:30 as advertised, but at least within an hour, by 9:30, most of the polling units have commenced the accreditation and voting, which is also commendable. Then the fact that there was a reduction in the number of violence incidents is also a plus. There was also a reduction in vote buying. There was also priority voting given to women, pregnant women, nursing mothers, the aged, and persons with disabilities. At least for these 5 categories of variables, INEC has improved. But whether the election was perfect, it was not. And the desperation of the political class came out fully manifested. As we speak now, there is still contention over some of the results that have been announced in Bayelsa. It remains to be seen what will come out of Southern Niger. But in terms of voter turnout, I didn't expect anything better than what came out. Queen, if you follow through with electoral process, in time past, people will travel home to cast their ballots. With the economic crunch now, how many people did you see traveling home to say they want to go and vote? Aside from that, you said voters should not collect money from politicians. So, as governance impacted on them so much that they can volunteer and use their own resources to travel to go and vote. Then the security ahead of the election. We know Imo State is a volatile state, particularly the Olu zone, where you have the Governor Okuzodima's senatorial district. It's particularly where the activities of unknown gunmen was most pronounced. And people will think twice to say, for the sake of casting their ballot, should they be martyred in that process? So that also may have accounted for the perceived low turnout. I think the turnout on the average shouldn't be more than 30%. But that's still significantly higher than the turnout during the general elections. And let me also remind you, Queen, in the Anambra governorship election that took place a couple of years ago, only 10.24% of voters in Anambra made Professor Chukwuma Soludo governor of Anambra State. So when you put all of that in context, you find out that the numbers are even a little bit better than what obtains done in the general elections. However, I've said this time and again, if you want to combat voter apathy and low turnout of voters, there are a number of things that needs to be done. And I will enumerate them very quickly. The first is that there should be provision for early voting. In other climes, if you are going to be on election duty, I don't know whether my brother Emmanuel was on the field as accredited observer. But for many of us who were either doing analysis on different media stations or those who are on the field, and over 100,000, accredited observers were on the field on Saturday. Look at the number of security agents. Look at the number of ad hoc staff themselves. When you put all of these figures together, not also forgetting the media, the journalists that were deployed to report on the election, all of this category of people were disenfranchised from voting. And that is why in other climes, there is provision for what is called early voting. This early voting makes provision for those who will be on election or essential duties to cast their ballots at least a week ahead of the general poll. Ghana has this provision. Many other African countries, Kenya, Uganda, many of them have this provision. Nigeria does not. There is also the issue of voting hours. In Nigeria, our voting hours is just 6 hours. But I can tell you confidently, and I've observed election across several countries. In Kenya, election is from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 12 hours. In Egypt, we have been privileged to observe election. Election is from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In US, election is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you have many countries that are doing 12 hours of election on election day. But in Nigeria, it's just 8 to 2 or 8:30 to 2:30, which means you are just doing 6 hours. So if I do not have opportunity to come out within that 6 hours, I'm shut out. And don't forget, election did not commence across board at 8:30. So these are part of the reason why there is a low voter turnout. Aside from that, did you know in the election that took place in Kenya in August 2022, prisoners were allowed to vote. Prisoners who are not on death row, they voted. And also there's something called diaspora voting. Although for governorship election, diasporans cannot vote. But for presidential, in Kenya of August 2022, Kenyans who are in 12 different countries across the world were allowed to vote in the consulate and embassies of Kenya in those countries. These include countries like South Africa, Canada, Germany, Britain, US, Rwanda, Burundi, and Ethiopia, and all of that. 12 countries. These are things you can check. So there is also what is called mail-in ballots. In other clients, you have opportunity to send your ballot by email or by post. if you are not going to be. So these are devices, multiple voting opportunities that other clients have always have put in place to encourage more voters to vote. But in Nigeria, we are just one way. And let me remind you, Queen, this year, 2023, makes it 100 years that Nigeria has been practicing electoral democracy. It started in 1923. That was when we have the first election in Nigeria, 1923, after the Clifford Constitution of 1922. In 100 years, other countries, Niger Republic, Nigerians who were in Nigeria during their last presidential election were allowed to vote. That's diaspora voting. But Nigeria, that is the big brother, has only 6 hours of voting. And don't also forget the lockdown of the country, because an election, whether it's local government, whether it's governorship, is holding. You shut down the country or the state for 24 hours. You need to see the traffic jam in Kogi State. Kogi is bordered by 9 different states. I hope you know that.
Okay,
9 states.
Sorry
and
to cut
FCT
you.
bordered Kogi. And people wanted to travel from different parts of the country. They were locked down because of the shutdown of the entire state arising from election.
Thank you very much,
These are some of
Mr.
the reasons
Jide.
why you see low voter turnout. And we have to do something.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Osameka, thank you for holding on to as well. We have to take a quick break. When we come back, the program continues. Please stay with us.
To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Many thanks for staying with us. The program is still Insight today. And before we went on the break, Mr. Jide Ojo, a development consultant, has been taking us through the issues arising from the election. We still have Mr. Emmanuel Osameka holding on. Mr. Emmanuel, I would like to know, because we see in the news that the SDP is ordering INEC to review the results of the elections in Kogi State. Do you think, or do you see more legal battles between winners and losers in this election?
To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
Okay, many thanks for staying with us. We apologize for that technical glitch. Just before the break, I was asking Mr. Osemeka a question, but I think we have Mr. Jide Ojo on the line. I said earlier that in the news, it's reported that the SDP is calling on INEC to review the elections, the results.
Of course, definitely there will be legal pursuit, irrespective of how the election comes out. And the review process can still be activated within 7 days of the result of the election being pronounced. So there is a section, I don't know whether it's, I don't want to mislead the viewing public, the section of the Electoral Act, which empowers INEC to review results that have already been declared by the returning officer. So if there is a wrong declaration, INEC National, the national chairman and the commission sitting can actually review what has been declared by the returning officer. And let me give you a very practical example. In Kano, there was a particular Federal House of Reps election. What is the name of this majority leader of House of Reps in the 9th House of Reps? It was his constituency where that incident happened. And a return was made under duress. The professor that was the returning officer for that House of Reps election wrote officially to INEC to say, I made the wrong call under duress. And INEC reviewed the results within 7 days and declared the election of, what is his name now? I've forgotten. That his election is inconclusive and that there will be a supplementary election in about 9 polling units or something. And of course, eventually when that even happened, when the supplementary election happened, he still won. But INEC was able to exercise and activated the power that has been vested in it by Electoral 2022, which says that it is not whatever the returning officer said is not the final. It can still be reviewed within a window of 7 days. What I would expect the opposition in Kogi to do is to formally write to INEC leadership for the review of that election result. If they have facts and figures backing up their claim. Because it's not enough to say we were rigged out. The court, even when they go to court, which I know that some of them will go to, even if they go to court, the court will not rely on hearsay. For instance, for all the pre-filled result sheets, INEC will claim that they have isolated those ones and that they were not collated, which is why they possibly said there would be supplementary election in those places. But I think in my own experience and in my own opinion, the returning officer for Kogi governorship election erred in law by making that early commitment that there will be supplementary election. See, there is a provision in the guidelines that talks about margin of lead. If the margin of lead is such that the lead by the person who is leading and the first runner, the number of votes in the council area will alter the outcome of the election one way or the other. That's when you go back and conduct supplementary poll. Not in a situation where the winner led the first runner by almost 200,000 votes, and the entire voting population in Ugorimagongo and those other areas where results were alleged to have been pre-filled was less than 50,000. So, of what benefit is going to conduct a supplementary election when you have already declared a winner? So it is trite, it is useless, it is superfluous for you to now deploy resources to go and do that election. Because what it then means is that you are still going to call poll agents and call the candidate and say that, okay, bring the result we have earlier issued to you. This is the final result. That the law does not operate on that basis of interim result and final result. It will have been okay if you have not made a declaration and you just stop at announcing results. Like in Bayelsa State, what we have been treated to is announcement of results. There has been no declaration made. So that's what the returning officer in Kogi should have done. But let's wait and see pan-out in the course of the week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jide. Mr. Osemeka, thank you also for holding on. In Imo, I'm aware that the results for Bayelsa is not yet out. As a matter of fact, they're still collating that result. But in Imo and Kogi State, do you think that the outcome of this election reflects the will of the people in Kogi and Imo State? We see that, particularly in Imo State, where the incumbent governor won with quite a lot of margin, a wide margin. Do you think this is as a result of the power of the incumbency, or it is the will of the people in Kogi and Imo State? Very quickly, please.
You are talking about Alhassan Dogua from Kano.
Yes, Alhassan Dogua, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so my dear sister Queen, I have to be the Holy Spirit to be able to go to Imo State and Kogi State to determine whether it's the will of the people or it's not the will of the people. But if we follow the accusations and counter-accusations, one is for Imo State. Yes, the governor won 27 out of 27 as released by INEC. However, the opposition is claiming that the result that election did not hold in many places, and in places where election held, that they bypassed BVAS was not used. So those are some of the accusations and counter-accusations you're hearing. And of course, the usual vote buying accusations. So if that is what it is, then of course that's falsification of results. That's one. Then two, we go to Kogi State. The Kogi State story has been that result sheets were filled in many of the locations. If you listen to the SDP candidate, that's Muritala Ajaka, he said in his press briefing that INEC should cancel the election, that there were massive rigging, the result sheets were given to APC people to fill before even the election began, most especially in Kogi North, that he's not even going to bother himself going to court. Whereas the PDP candidate, said the election should be cancelled completely. So the truth is, these are the dramatis personae in these two states where declaration has taken place. And in all fairness, I believe lessons need to be learned, but it's always very difficult to talk about lessons being learned because at the end of the day, there's always this interference that comes, just like my big brother Jide had talked about, the power of incumbency and all that. You cannot be contesting election against a sitting governor who has spent 4 years or 3.5 years, who has been, what do you call it now, federal allocation, who has been collecting IGR, who has been collecting a lot of money, and how much are you going to raise? So on the average, a state governor, like for example, I heard that Bayelsa State in the last 3.5 years have collected 352 billion naira. How many of the candidates can boast of 100 billion to put in an election? So suppose the governor who has collected 352 billion and decides to save money from the one he enters the office to prosecute his election.
Very quickly, do you think that INEC has justified, the 18 billion naira that has been spent for the election?
Through than the contestants who are not into that incumbency with those who are able to probably raise 2 or 3 billion. So the truth is that we need to find a way, to ensure level playing field to a very large extent. In the United States of America, funds are raised publicly, and you can see the administration of those funds. Even when the president of the US uses the Air Force One to go for his campaign, they send him an invoice. In Nigeria, the state governors use the total state apparatus to prosecute the election. Likewise, the sitting president, when he's contesting against other candidates, even as an incumbent. And there's no level playing field, with that. So I believe we need to, go back to the drawing board and take a look at what we have been doing and how far we've come with a view to improving in real terms, our elections. That way also we're able to throw up the best candidates, because today is about the winner takes all, or the battle of the deepest pocket or the biggest pocket. So that's what I feel. Now our elections have become an election of money, where money determines who wins. If you don't have the resources, you're unable to win election. And that way we'll be throwing up the worst of us to be ruling the best of us.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Osemeka. Thank you very much for your time with us. Sadly, that's how much we can take on the program because of our time. And there's definitely so much that we can, dissect, and so much we need to talk about as regards the outcome of the election. But I want to thank you so much for honoring our invite. Mr. Jide Ojo, thank you so much for hanging in. Thank you for your time. Well, that's how much we can take on the program on Insight today. Don't forget that you're watching us live in the nation's capital, Abuja, Global TV. And please don't also forget to follow us across all social media platforms using @Global TV NG. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Queen Agaba.
To ask how, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people. How, why, when, and why it must be immediate.
Educate a woman, you have educated a nation.
The outcome of a review of the same election are being finalized.
You have responsibility to serve the people.
A cross-section of Nigerians has reacted to the announcement by the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Prince Shaibu Audu, assuring of the federal government's commitment to complete the Ajaokuta steel construction project, which is said to have the potential of creating 500,000 jobs for Nigerians. Nigerians have aired their views concerning the issue of the ongoing Ajaokuta steel construction project. For a steel complex that has been comatose for decades, many Nigerians are full of expectations, and it serves as a test of government's resolve. However, Edward, for instance, does not find the story particularly inspiring.
We've heard so much about Ajaokuta Steel, and it's like at a point we're beginning to lose hope. But because hope is the essence of life, we believe that this government, or whatever successive government, should do something about it, because Nigeria needs it. And Nigeria is more important than anybody. So we are believing that because of humanity, we need it. We can't continue to be stagnant. We need to move forward.
Roberts, on the other hand, expresses optimism and advises Nigerians to keep hope alive while constantly believing in and supporting the government.
The time has come for us to actually believe in the words of Mr. President. You understand, he's a pragmatic person. He's focused, and he has direction. And he has armed himself with technocrats. And I believe so much in the words of the Honorable Minister, who is a representative of the President of the Republic of Nigeria. And also, you have a permanent secretary, you understand, in that ministry that is a technocrat. And I believe that they will swing into action very soon.
For Wasil Awar, a civil servant, more commitment to the Ajaokuta steel complex is expected of the government, considering the need to industrialize Nigeria in order to encourage local production.
We have the natural deposit of this steel in Nigeria, so it cannot just be wasted, it cannot be moribund. If the other subsequent previous administration have been coming, they are making lips emphasis on it. But I think he is more pragmatic on it, as he laid emphasis on it now. But you have to realize that the Ajaokuta steel is not going to start from embryo. It has gotten to a stage before it was moribund. So now what he's going to do now is to resuscitate it. So by resuscitating it, all the manpower needed, the capacity and capability needed, he knows them. Just to ask them to come back. And once it is top on his agenda, so if it's top of he's going to lay emphasis on it, and the thing will be prosecuted.
Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.